Okay, so where do I start with this video? This is another commentary on Lawrence Krauss, the crusading pseudo-physical scientist who has made it his mission to try to convince everyone that it's impossible that there could be any kind of spiritual underlying reality to the universe. There could be no creator who created the universe, and that anyone who believes that is some kind of delusional weirdo. And in this video, he's having a debate with Dr. William Craig, and this part of the video that I'd like to just comment on is part where they're discussing the apparent fine-tuning, as Dr. Craig puts it, of the laws of physics, the laws of physics that make up the universe. The fact that when the Big Bang happened, all of the laws of physics just came into being, and they appear to be perfectly what's the word? The laws of physics are such that they enable physical matter to exist, and thereby life to exist. And it appears that they're incredibly fine-tuned, because if you change any tiny thing in any of the different fundamental forces, or things like the cosmological constant, then all of a sudden it's impossible for even physical material to even come into being. And it's very interesting that while Lawrence Krauss often says that he often talks about the fact that how can you believe in a creator God that exists outside of the universe in some kind of existence that is unprovable, and we can't prove that anything like a creator God could exist. There's no evidence to prove it. Yet his argument against Dr. Craig here is almost identical. He argues that conscious, intelligent life could exist in a completely alien universe with completely different laws of physics that doesn't even contain physical matter. And he's arguing that life could exist there, and who are we to say that it couldn't? Which is the exact opposite of what he says to other people. That, when they say to him, who are you to say that there isn't some creator God? He says, oh, well, there's no evidence, I don't believe it. And yet he uses the same argument himself. So it's amazing what kind of double standards he has, and he just sort of talks he generally talks in sort of circular arguments that go nowhere, pseudo-science, and his whole demeanour comes across, he sort of slouches in his chair like a strange little goblin, and sort of stands up all the time and shouts and gets irate and worked up, and it's very, his whole body language is kind of indicative of somebody who is really trying to sort of force his opinion on other people, like he has some kind of agenda. It's very, very interesting to watch. He has this kind of agenda to convince everyone that there is no God, basically. And the other thing he does, when he talks about this multiverse theory, he gets all excited when he feels like Dr. Craig is happy to let him talk about a multiverse theory, because there's no evidence at all of a multiverse. That's another completely way out there theory, just as wild as there being a creator God, in my opinion. Saying that there's multiple infinite, or not even infinite, but, well, infinite or whatever, if there's any other kind of parallel universe to this one. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. And then he goes on to say that the only reason this universe is like it is because there's these millions and infinite number of other universes where there is no life, and we just happen to be in the one where there is life, like as if that it's like a type of natural selection. I mean, that's such an abstraction built upon abstraction, and to argue that is just moronic, to be honest. He really clutches at straws to try and force his opinion, his strange dogmatic opinions on everyone else. Anyway, so let's just play this and I'll comment on it.
Okay, right. And so I always bet, in fact, I bet the Higgs wouldn't exist, because most simple theories are wrong.
You bet against it.
Yeah, because it just seemed too simple and slimy. But on the other hand, the difference is, while I thought it was ugly, it exists, so I've changed my mind. And in fact,
good.
I wrote a paper that showed that fine-tuning that you talk about is natural in the context of the models once you add a Higgs. So I actually explained the fine-tuning just last week.
You're talking about...
He explained it, like he sort of announces that he's explained the apparent fine-tuning of the universe, like he did it or something. I mean, his arrogance is just... His sort of arrogance kind of seeps off of him like a sort of bad smell. It's amazing.
The cosmological constant.
Yeah.
But you know that the fine-tuning extends far beyond that. There's a
as I told you that
diverse
day,
and multiple
we don't
range
have,
of
and here's the
finely
problem
tuned
with the
constants.
fine-tuning argument. Here's the problem with the fine-tuning argument. One of them. There are many of them, but I told you this the other day. We don't know the measure. We don't know the phase space. It is true that life, that many aspects of human life would have been impossible if certain constants were different.
Yes.
Is it surprising? It would have been much more surprising if we evolved in a universe in which we couldn't live.
Is it just me, or is that a completely moronic statement? It would be more surprising if we evolved in a universe where we couldn't live. What earth is he talking about? That's just a sort of it's like double think. It's like out of 1984 or something.
Okay, so it's just like saying
That would be a contradiction.
A bee knows the color, can find the colors of flowers. So it's not because the bee is designed, it's because if they didn't, they couldn't reproduce.
No.
It's not just...
Well, I mean, you know, I think I know what Krauss is trying to get at here. I think he's trying to say that, okay, you know, if the universe wasn't exactly as it is, then we wouldn't even be here to be talking about it. So therefore it's a sort of pointless thing to think about. You know, I mean, that is true. It is true. You know, obviously if the universe hadn't appeared with the exact perfect design of physical laws as it has, then we wouldn't be here talking about it. So what's the point speculating about if it didn't have those laws? You know, but to think like that is to think that basically that the universe came into being and just completely by random chance just happened to just manifest with all of the laws of physics that were perfectly suited for atoms, quantum particles, gravity, electricity, you know, the strong force, the weak force, all of the fundamental particles and everything that it needed to form, not only for chemicals to form, but also for planets and stars and eventually for life to form. That just happened by chance. You know, that is, you know, either way you look at it, it's amazing. I mean, if you think that happened because a creator designed it, then that is a sort of, you know, a religious kind of stunning concept to think of. That a creator God created the universe like it is. But it is almost as equally stunning and kind of, you know, it's equally as amazing to think that could have happened by random chance. I mean, what would be the probability of that happening by random chance? You can't really talk about probability in terms of a universe coming into existence out of nothing with all the perfect conditions for, you know, as I just stated above. You know, that would be just as equally a divine creation event in my mind. That that probability could manifest. Excuse me. you know, that could exist, could happen by chance is, you know, what caused that random chance to happen. That's, again, you come back to the idea of a creator, because, you know, whatever it is, it's unknowable. And anyway, I've gone off on a tangent. He, you know, because he probably is aware of how stupid that sounds to just say, oh well, you know, it just happened by chance and that's it, and there's no need for a creator, and that you're all delusional if you think that. He then goes to this multiverse idea, because if you believe that there's a multiverse, then yeah, then you can start clinging on to this idea that, oh well, you know, there are an infinite number of universes and we just happen to be in the one that just happens to be right for us to exist. You know, and that just seems like, you know, a bit like Darwinism or something. But that is really a way out there theory. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. And to be perfectly honest, it's almost kind of silly thing to think anyway, because, you know, how did all those multiverses get there? They must have come from one source. There must be what contains the multiverses, a higher universe, you know. And then this, you have the same. You're back to the same problem again. Okay, how come that universe came into being, which then allowed for the verses to exist? So it's a circular argument that goes nowhere. And you know, he sort of slouches in his chair like some kind of arrogant little toad. And other parts of this video, it's called. I'll link to it in my. I'll link to it in one of my playlists. It's called "Life, the Universe, and Nothing. Is it reasonable to believe there is a God?" And at other points in the video, he stands up, he shouts, he walks around. It's quite incredible. Anyway, let's continue.
Surprising that we don't know if you change the constants of nature, whether other life forms with vastly different characteristics couldn't be conscious. We don't even know what consciousness is. So how can you make this assertion that life is fine-tuned? In fact, as I pointed out to you, if the cosmological constant and other constants were changed, there'd be more life in the universe.
That is a very strange thing to assert. I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but anyway. But the fact that he says, oh yeah, you could change all of the laws of physics and there could still be life, is totally ludicrous, because as a scientist, he should understand that there's a very clear definition of what life is as a biologist. And I mean, you know, I had a conversation with someone once about crystals. They said, oh, you know, crystals are alive. And you know, crystals, they do have a certain kind of energy and they are fascinating. But to say that they're alive, you know, you have to sort of say, are you talking like in poetic terms, you know? Are you talking about, you know, like you walked into a room and the room felt alive? Or are you talking about a living creature? A living biological creature has a very strict definition. It's something that usually has respiration, you know, it consumes energy, and it has consciousness. I mean, he thinks that only humans have consciousness, but it's ridiculous. Obviously, all life forms are conscious. That's part of the definition of life, I would say. But you know, to assert that there could be completely different types of life that don't even have water in them and don't respire and don't use oxygen and don't consume food and don't consume energy is completely absurd, because that wouldn't be life. I mean, if I wanted to define life as being something else, I mean, I could choose anything. I'd say, well, this cup is alive. You know, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't eat food, it's alive in some kind of completely different way that we can't understand, and it's conscious. You know, I mean, I could say, you know, anyone could say that. I mean, what's more absurd, to say that or to say that there's a creator God? I mean, he's really clutching at straws when he's asserting that kind of nonsense. Yeah, let's continue.
The universe is not particularly conducive to life. It's amazing we're here. There are asteroids that could destroy us at any instant. The fact is, most of the universe is a harsh, miserable place, and life doesn't exist in almost all of it.
I don't know how he thinks he knows that. Has he been there? Has he visited other galaxies? has he visited other solar systems? How does he know that there's hardly any life in the universe? That's such an arrogant, nonsensical statement.
That's irrelevant to the requisite fine-tuning of those initial conditions in the Big Bang with the constants and quantities which must be in place if anywhere in the cosmos life is to evolve and exist.
No, a life like us.
Hang on.
No.
Yeah, well, life like us. Yeah, that's what we call life, Lawrence. You know life? That thing that is defined in biology? Yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about life. Life as we know it. Biological life. Pretty much always uses water. It breathes, you know, it needs oxygen. You know, that's what we're talking about, Lawrence. He sort of has this attitude that somehow that it's perfectly acceptable to just imagine some completely different type of life that no one's ever heard of. I mean, what is he talking about? It's ridiculous.
No. Not,
How do you know? How do you know what kind of life can exist?
How do you know? How do you know what kind of life could exist? You sound almost like, well, he seems to have a lot of faith in some kind of like strange, unknown type of life that no one's ever heard of.
Talking about universes governed by different laws of
No,
nature.
I'm just saying all I'm saying is we know of one kind of intelligent life in some of this room. And
Nice little insult there.
and the point is we don't just don't know what the phase space is. In fact, I wrote a paper once showing that if you made different assumptions about what kind of life could exist, that you'd predict radically different values for the fundamental constants. So we just don't know the answer.
It's a wild speculation that other different types of life can exist. Which no one has ever come close to being able to prove anything like that. But he's using it as the whole basis of his argument that this weird exotic type of life could exist, and that therefore that means that this universe isn't special. I mean, that's his whole argument. That's what Lawrence Krauss believes. He believes that he says that this universe is not special, it's not unique, there's nothing amazing about it, because it could just as easily be that there's some weird exotic type of life form that doesn't even use physical, isn't even made of molecules, doesn't use water, is like nothing we've ever heard of before, anyone's ever dreamed of, and that, you know, because that's perfectly plausible. So therefore this universe isn't special. I mean, what an absolute load of nonsense. That's his argument. That's what he wants you to believe. That's it in a nutshell. So he's just a moron. He's just a moron. He's just clutching at straws.
It's an interesting question. It's an interesting possibility, and it may even be right. It may even be right that there's a lot of universes, but if that's the case, it's not design, it's natural selection.
Oh, here we go. Ooh, it may be the case, he says. It may be the case. He sort of looks at Dr. Craig here and says it may be the case, like as if he was the one that just said that. He never said that. This is this is Lawrence's idea. So he basically says, well, basically what he's saying is, well, it may be, you know, I've got this other wild little joker in my back pocket. It may be that there's millions of multiple parallel universes which no one can ever prove. Well, no one has ever proved. You know, it's a totally wild theory. It's just totally out there. It might be that's the way it is, and that therefore this universe isn't special because of that. You know, oh, well, that's an idea. Look at my little gold Converse. I'm so freaky and groovy, aren't I? I'm just like a little goblin with my stupid little shoes on, and everyone has to believe me.
It's cosmic natural selection. We find ourselves living in a universe in which we can live. Big surprise.
Right.
Oh, big surprise. Oh, big surprise, Lawrence. You're so clever, aren't you?
That's not a surprise, but that's not the
But
argument,
other universes
Lawrence.
in which the constants are different, either we wouldn't exist or different life forms exist. It's
What other universes? What other universes? What are you talking about?
not special creation. It's exactly the same.
So basically his whole argument is that the universe that we're in is not a special creation because of these other universes. These other universes that only he knows about in his little funny little troll shoes.
I was going to say philosophical. It's exactly the same logical problem that people had before Darwin. Everything looked designed. Life looks beautifully
No,
designed.
it's not the same. It's not the same logical problem at all, because because it's not to do with the intelligent design theory of life at all. Because that is a system which has massive diversity. You know, that is there is natural selection, and that is something that we discovered. Natural selection of universes. What the hell is he talking about? Natural selection of universes in a multiverse. That no one's. It's not the same as the problem we had before Darwinism. Just made that up.
It is not the same. What we're dealing with here is, if we talk about life in the most general terms, is the ability of an organism to take in food, process it, reproduce after its kind. Life so generally defined wouldn't exist anywhere in the
That's
cosmos.
not true. For example,
without the fine-tuning.
I'm going to a
hang on,
conference
hang on.
with Freeman Dyson,
Lawrence.
who's been having a debate with me about this,
No,
and we've
why-
been talking about exotic forms of life.
In the absence of the fine-tuning, it's not as though there might be different odd aliens that would evolve somewhere in the universe. In the absence of fine-tuning, there wouldn't even be matter. There wouldn't even be
How do you
chemistry.
know? How do you know?
Because
How do you know? Because he's a physicist, you idiot, Krauss? Because he understands the laws of physics, like loads of people do, and apparently you don't. If the laws of physics weren't the same, there wouldn't be any physical matter. There would definitely. He's completely correct on that, and Krauss is just sort of wheezing at him like some kind of angry, snubbed kind of troll creature. I don't know.
the laws are kept.
There would be matter like we measure. But if the quark masses were different, there'd be different kinds of matter. I mean,
Oh, right, so there'd be different kinds of matter. I mean, he's not even speculating about there being different life as we know it, like silicon-based life or something that doesn't use water, which is completely out there. He's talking about life that doesn't even have anything from the periodic table. It's like it doesn't even have even matter as we know it. I mean, according to Krauss's definition, pretty much anything could be alive. I mean, literally, like I said before, a cup, a stone, you know, a cloud. I mean, anything could be alive, according to him, apparently.
in fact, if there were different symmetry groups, there'd be different kinds of matter and different forces. How do you know what's possible if you don't know what's possible?
There aren't different forces.
How do you know?
Because we're
Because we're talking about life as we know it.
considering that subset of universes governed by the same laws, but with different values of the constants and quantities, and therefore we can predict what would happen
One
if
thing you
those
don't
were
understand is a
changed.
different constant means a different force. The weak force is short range. The electromagnetism is long range. Radically different just because of a different constant. If I gave the photon a mass, electromagnetism wouldn't exist anymore. So it's not as if the forces that exist at a human level depend...
Yeah, but this is wild, crazy speculation as well, because if you changed one little thing, like what he just said, like you change the speed of light, or change the cosmological constant, or what was it he just said? If you change...
the constants and quantities, and therefore we can predict
I'm sorry.
what would happen
One
if
thing you
those
don't
were
understand is a
changed.
different constant means a different force. The weak force is short range. The electromagnetism is long range. Radically different just because of a different constant.
Yeah, so he's talking about, like, if you change the weak force, for instance, or the strong force. If you change the weak force or the strong force, I'm pretty sure that a whole bunch of other stuff would have to change. It's not like that. It's the way I see the laws of physics. It's like it's like some kind of complex. Well, an analogy I like to think of in a way is that it's like a whole bunch of things connected by these sort of rubber bands. You know, you sort of pull one. If you pull one constant, the band stretches and it pulls all the other ones. You know, it's you can't just start changing little bits of the like changing the constants involved with the weak or the strong force, and then leave everything else the same. That can't happen.
I gave the photon a mass, electromagnetism wouldn't exist anymore. So it's not as if the forces that exist at a human level...
If you gave the photon a mass, what kind of mass? It wouldn't be a photon, would it? Everything would change. It's just ridiculous.
are different than the constants. If I gave the photon a mass, electromagnetism wouldn't exist, we wouldn't have lights, we wouldn't be here. And so... I'm sorry, Bill, you just don't understand the physics.
And that's what it comes down to at the end. After he's announced that after he's tried to basically say that you could have a universe where photons have a mass, and that somehow life would exist there, And then when he's clutching it, he can't clutch at any more straws. He just flips it around and says, "Sorry, you don't understand the laws of physics." I mean, come on.
Force is short range. The electromagnetism is long range, radically different just because of a different constant. If I gave the photon a mass, electromagnetism wouldn't exist anymore. So it's not as if the forces that exist at a human level are different than the constants. If I gave the photon a mass, electromagnetism wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have lights. We wouldn't be here. And so, I'm sorry, Bill, you just don't understand the physics. You're out of your depth here.
You're not arguing.
You just don't understand the physics. You're out of your depth here.
You're not arguing just with me here. You're arguing with all of the physicists who do accept that the universe is incredibly fine-tuned.
You just don't understand the physics. You're out of your depth here.
You're not arguing just with me.
You just don't understand the physics. You're out of your depth here.
You're not arguing just with me here. You're arguing with all of the physicists who do accept that the universe is incredibly fine-tuned.
There are parameters. You just don't understand the physics. You're out of your depth here.
You're not.
I think that's enough. I mean, seriously. Oh, you want to just for a little quick laugh? Let's just look a little bit earlier what he did in this conference.
But the way the universe works, it's rational. Even if you accept it's one God, the God depends upon, as you'll see, where you live. But the most important thing is our current understanding of nature has actually changed. We call it learning. It's developed since the claims were first made by peasants. Mr. Hitchens really presented the fundamental irrationality of the premise of a savior. We're asked to believe the following. First, that our God created our universe 14 billion years ago, except in many states in my country.
That's not a bit where he starts
and
jumping up and shouting.
Anyway, then he waited almost 10 billion.
Oh, anyway, whatever.
The premise is more.
I've seen enough. There he is, Trollman Kraus, and I think I've said enough, really. I think the facts speak for themselves, as he just has a whole bunch of very illogical arguments. Okay, bye.